Hello, this is a little sub video from the indexing options. Indexing options, hl2mt tool creates a bunch of HTML files, and it requires that you host those HTML files on a web server. I have a web server, which is what I use, but most people don't. But one thing you can do is you can host those files on Dropbox if you set up your Dropbox account a certain way. So Dropbox it's free, it's pretty easy to use. So I'm going to go ahead and cover how to use your Dropbox account for map tool indexing. First off, I'm going to assume that you've already set up a Dropbox account. That's something I don't really want to cover because I'm in Linux and there's a lot of different platforms, a lot of different ways to set it up. But right here I have my computer set up with a Dropbox account, and I've got a file manager open, and right now I'm in my Dropbox account folder. One thing you need to do with your Dropbox account is you have to enable an option called public folders. And public folders isn't enabled by default, but it's really easy to enable. You simply go to a URL, www.dropbox.com/enable_public_folder. And when you go to that URL, it'll take you to this interface, and it will create a public folder for you, and it puts a little file in there called how to use the public folder. And I'll put that link inside the comments for the YouTube video section here. So when you have this public folder, this is a folder that anybody via the web can get to this folder with a special URL, but it can be a little hard to figure out what that URL is, so that's the first thing we need to do. And how we're going to do that is we're going to go into our public folder, and we're going to go ahead and create a new folder. I'm going to call this folder map tool, and this is the folder where I'm going to save all the generated HTML that hl2mt tool creates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this map2 URL, and I'm just going to create a test document. I'm going to call this test.html, but you can call it whatever you want. And after I've created this document, what I want to do is I want to use this document to give me the URL, the web URL, to all the files that are going to be in here. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to right click on the file, go to Dropbox, and I'm going to do copy public link. Now your interface may look a little different than this. I'm under Linux Debian, but in general you'll have a way to copy public link. That's the phrase Dropbox uses for their interface. So just you want to copy the public link, and that'll copy the public link for this file into my copy paste buffer. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a web browser. I'm going to open up a new tab. I'm going to hit Control V, and that'll paste that into my web URL. So basically what I have is I am going via a web browser to this test file. And what I want to do with this is I want everything except the test.html. I want the rest of this URL. And the reason I want the rest of this URL is I need to tell hl2mt tool, when it creates macros, all the tokens, it needs to know where these index files are going to be held. Because when you have a token and you click on, say, the character sheet macro, it's going to actually go to your Dropbox account, and it's going to grab the HTML file for that character sheet and put it into map tool. So it needs to know what this URL is. So you want to copy everything that isn't the test HTML file, and you just want to put that in your little copy paste buffer. And then what you'll do is you want to go ahead and start up hl2mt tool. Now inside hl2mt tool, I want to go to indexing options. I want to turn on HTML indexing, and then I want to copy paste that URL into the base HTTP URL box. So you can see right here, my URL is https dl dropboxusercontent.com u. I guess that's probably my user ID. And there's that little map tool folder at the very end. So I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to process files. I'm going to create all the tokens. Then I'm going to go to my directory structure, and this is my output directory for all those tokens. So here's all the tokens. One other thing with the indexing options is there is a zip file name. Here it's hl2index.zip. That is right here and that is where all of the HTML files are saved. So what you need to do is you need to double click to open that up, and this is all the HTML files that you want to copy onto your Dropbox account. So I'm in my map to a folder. I've got a slow internet connection, so I'm going to copy over one character sheet page. You can see that right there, and it syncs up. I'm going to copy over the rest of these character sheet pages. But what you want to do is you really want to copy everything in this zip file. I'm just copying a few other files over first, so that way when I go into Map Tool, I don't have to wait like half an hour for all this stuff to sync up, because I have a very slow internet connection. Okay, so all these files are copying over to my Dropbox account. So let's go ahead and go into Map Tool. So inside Map Tool, here's my burnt offerings tokens, and I'm going to copy over one of those characters. And this character, I'm going to click on the character sheet macro, and it fetched the character sheet from Dropbox. And how I know it did that is if I close that, and if I hover over the sheet macro and I right click, I can choose Edit. And then when I go to edit this macro, this right here, this request URL, this is the URL it's fetching that file from. So I can see it's actually using DL dropboxusercontent.com u23 whatever map tool underscore Nuala, because that's her character sheet. And all the other characters are like that too. Here's Larry. Her character sheet macro should be copied up. And there's her character sheet macro. And if I edit her macro, it's the same way. DL, Dropbox, user content, so on and so forth. Let me see if the rest of these files have copied. No, they haven't. So some of the feats won't work. The rest of these files are feats and whatnot. Like I said, my internet's too slow. But that's all you really need to do to use Dropbox. You need to set up your Dropbox account. Then you need to go to a URL to enable the public folder. That'll give you your public folder. Then once you have your public folder set up, you just want to create a subfolder, and inside that subfolder you want to create a test document. You want to get the URL of your map tool subfolder. Then you want to put that in hl2mt tool, and you can create your tokens. And then you just take the content from the zip file that hl2mt tool creates and copy that over to your Dropbox account, and that's it. You're done. Well, I hope this video has been helpful.